All inventions start with a great idea, but where do those ideas come from? The easy answer is to say that they come from the minds of geniuses, but some geniuses are even brighter than others. We're about to show you some incredible feats of building work and technological advancement that were years ahead of their time. In some cases, they're ancient inventions that shouldn't even have been possible for their era. Gaze upon them in wonder. The ancient stone fortress of Sigiriya in Sri Lanka is a place so wondrous and mystical that some believe it deserves to be named as the 8th wonder of the world. Found in Sri Lanka's Mattal district, the name of the location translates into English as the Lion Mountain and is notorious for being used by a king of the old world to hide from an attack from forces under the command of his own brother. The entire construction is a wonder that defies explanation, but the most breathtaking feature at the site is the Lion's Staircase, a walkway covered in tiles that rises directly into the open jaws of the watchful lion. Only the bravest of tourists dare to walk all the way up to the top, but the limestone steps, with their brick and timber surrounds, make the journey worth it. Just as important as the staircase, though, are the frescoes and paintings that are thought to be the oldest surviving examples of Sri Lankan classical realism, dating back to the 5th century. As inhabitants of an island nation, it was inevitable that the ancient people of Great Britain would have something of a head start on the majority of the world when it comes to building ships. But could that head start have put them 3,000 years ahead of anybody else? That's the conclusion that's been reached by scientists and archaeologists investigating the seabed of what used to be Doggerland near the Isle of Wight, where they believe they found the remains of an 8,000-year-old shipyard. Many years ago, Doggerland was the strip of land that connected Great Britain to continental Europe, but it sank below the waves approximately 6,000 years as a result of the Ice Age coming to an end. Cutting-edge digital technology has allowed us to recreate the appearance of the shipyard as it supposedly looked during the years of its use. Previously, it was thought that the first humans to create boats did so approximately 3,000 years ago. So if the scientists are correct in what they say, it will change everything we thought we knew about maritime history. Here in the 21st century, we still consider the technology of artificial limbs and prostheses to be a developing one, as we search for devices that will give their users a better range of movement and sense of touch than they've been able to enjoy in the past. The technology has been developing for a lot longer than most people realize, and its pioneer was a humble English shoemaker. James Gillingham was running a shoe shop in 1866 when he met a soldier who had lost an arm to cannon fire in a battle. The soldier had been told by doctors that nothing could be done to assist him, but Gillingham was a man who liked a challenge. He built the soldier a strong, comfortably fitted leather limb, and from there, branched out into making custom limb replacements of all kinds. According to his records, he'd created a total of 15,000 prosthetic limbs by the year 1910, and in many cases, he has photographic records to prove it. The doctors of the time were keen to know how he made such perfectly designed prosthetics, but he went to the grave without ever giving away his secrets. Another of today's emerging technologies is the science of drones. They've been used in photography and reconnaissance for some time, but large companies like Amazon are currently investigating their potential for home delivery use. In doing so, they're following a pattern that began more than a century ago with the eccentric genius Nikola Tesla. Tesla is credited with inventing many incredible electrical items, but his most impressive achievement might have been creating the world's first remote-controlled device. Wireless technology was a lifelong interest for Tesla, and he was especially proud of the radio-controlled boat he displayed at Madison Square Garden in 1898. The concept was so alien to the crowd of onlookers that some of them were afraid of it, so Tesla decided to play into their fears by pretending he was controlling it with his voice, rather than the remote control he was hiding in his pocket. According to press articles that were written at the time, some of the audience ran away from the demonstration in sheer terror. In this time of selfies and social media, we place a lot of emphasis on beauty. Because of that, many people call upon the services of cosmetic surgeons to help them perfect their look. Once again, we think of this as a modern trend, but its roots go back further than you'd imagine. The first modern-age rhinoplasty procedure, the cosmetic operation that celebrities would refer to as a nose job, happened in Great Britain in 1814, under the hands of Joseph Constantine Carpue. Carpue's patient was an army officer who'd suffered a total nose collapse due to the mercury treatments he'd been prescribed to treat a liver complaint. It took only 15 minutes for Carpue to complete his pioneering work, for which the army officer was given no anesthetic. Although Carpue's skill was a revelation to people in Britain, the surgeon had been inspired by reports of similar procedures that were carried out in India some 20 years previously. In turn, Carpue inspired the German surgeon Karl Ferdinand von Graff, who is generally acknowledged as being the first person to use the phrase plastic surgery. Our next incredible invention is so complex and unique that it has no analog. It's considered to be the only universal astronomical clock in the world, and it was designed and built in Paris, France by Albert Billet in 1873. Billet was working for a relative of the Duke of Alba, a very rich man who wanted to own something grand, impressive, and completely unique. When it stopped working in 1911, Billet was dead and nobody else knew how to repair it. It wasn't until 1943 that a mathematician was able to work out the intricacies of its mechanisms and get it ticking again. The clock, which is 7 feet tall and 8 feet long, contains over 100 independent moving parts. That includes chronological aspects covering the Julian, Jewish, Gregorian, and Mohammedan calendars. It also shows the movements of the moon, sun, and major stars as they appear in the northern hemisphere. Just to make things even more impressive, there are a further 37 dials showing every time zone in the world, accompanied by further dials on the sides of the clock, tracking sunrise, sunset, the equinox, and solstice. 25 springs inside the device do most of the hard work, and the failure of just one would bring the whole thing to a stop. The idea of a submarine is almost as old as the idea of a boat. We can go back centuries and find examples of submarine-like designs from all over the world, but most of those ancient designs stayed on paper. Only one visionary of the old world had the skill and audacity to try to make a real-life working submarine. That was Cornelis Drebbel, who built 3 of them during the 1620s, and all of them worked. The Dutch engineer was working under the patronage of King James I of England at the time of his creation, and each of the 3 submarines he built was larger than the last. The third and final model was large enough to carry 16 people aboard. With no engine for propulsion, the boat was moved along using oars that protruded from waterproof leather seals, and air was fed in through tubes that resembled modern snorkels. Drebbel demonstrated his groundbreaking vehicles in England, where they traveled from Greenwich to Westminster and back at a depth of 15 feet beneath the water. Inexplicably, the British Navy of the time showed no interest in adapting the invention for military purposes. If you're one of our younger viewers, you may have frequently been told by your parents that 20 years ago, before the sat-nav became common in cars, people had to be able to read a map inside a car if they wanted to travel long distances. That was true in the majority of cases, but not all of them. The earliest example of a device that could be compared with a sat-nav can be traced all the way back to 1930 and went by the name of the Iter Avto. It could be fitted to a dashboard in the same way a sat-nav device would be today, and came packaged with a series of tiny paper paps that could be fed through it like a printer. A cable connected the map to the car's speedometer, and so as the car moved along the road, the map would scroll up through the Iter Avto and keep track of the car's current position. There was a drawback though. The device had no way of knowing whether you'd accidentally veered off the prepared route and changed direction. If that happened, you'd have to stop, find out where you were, and then manually reload a new map to get you back to the right place. During the 17th and 18th centuries, it was said that you could judge the class of a gentleman by the quality of his watch. That made watchmaking a glamorous and noble profession, and Frenchman Louis Moinet was sat at the top of it. The horologist wasn't only a creator of fine watches, he was also a skilled inventor. It took a long time for his invention to be recognized, but in 2016, the horologist was officially named as the inventor of the chronograph. For many years, Adolphe Nicole was recognized as the inventor because of the patent they filed in 1844. But Moinet's device is almost 30 years older, having been finished in 1816. A chronograph differs from a chronometer in the way that, as well as being able to measure time with incredible precision, it also has a stopwatch capability. The incredible chronograph made by Moinet is accurate to 1/60th of a second. The standard he set was so high that it took the famous Tag Heuer company exactly 100 years to come up with anything more accurate. The idea of underground cities is usually associated with the kind of fantasy novels that J.R.R. Tolkien used to write. But ancient underground cities are a reality in many European nations, and perhaps Turkey most of all. The largest of Turkey's ancient subterranean settlements is Kaymakli, and it's truly a wonder to behold. The secrets of the sites are shrouded in mystery, but it's generally believed that the first people to live in their mud and stone walls did so approximately 4,000 years ago, and that their motivation for moving below the surface was avoiding the roving hordes of barbarians and other invaders scouring and pillaging the land above them. What makes Kaymakli special is its degree of organization and sophistication. There are a whole 8 stories to the city, only 4 of which have ever been opened up to the public. There are even specialized rooms for winemaking, storage, cooking, and even theater. How its original architects could have performed such stunning work in near total darkness remains unknown. It's no secret that the Inca people who once lived in Peru were especially advanced for the time they lived in. We still can't make head nor tail of many of their carvings and artifacts today, but the site of Moray might be their greatest mystery. At first glance, the concentric circles that make up the site look like nothing more than an intricate decoration, but they serve a far grander purpose. These circles, which are found at the feet of the mountains of Cusco, appear to have been precision engineered to help ensure that the Inca had food to eat all year round. As each ring digs deeper into the surface of the earth, it gets a little warmer. The average difference in temperature between the outermost and innermost ring is a whole 15 degrees Celsius. Scientists and archaeologists believe that Moray was built this way because it would allow the Inca to plant different crops for different purposes. Some that could be grown during summer months, and some that would grow during winter. The level of agricultural knowledge that would have gone into designing and then creating Moray should have been impossible for the Inca. And yet here they are proving us wrong with this incredible archaeological site. Moray is just one of the things that the Inca left behind to remind the world of their genius. Another of their most astonishing artifacts can be found at the site of Sayhuti. The whole area is covered with stunning ancient wonders, but the Sayhuti monolith gets most of the attention, and deservedly so. It's thought that Sayhuti was a focal point for Inca religious and ceremonial gatherings, and a big part of those gatherings would have been the act of giving thanks to the Inca water gods in the hope that rain would soon come and feed their crops. They knew that the water would need a little help to feed the crops even if it did fall though, and so they became masters of irrigation. Before they went to work on the land, it appears that they designed a scale model of Sayhuti as it appeared to them when they were there. The monolith has all the hallmarks of being a topographic model of the area, complete with projected watercourses and possible irrigation paths. This is exactly how somebody designing a canal would go about testing their design now, but the Inca were doing it 7 centuries ago. who or what left behind these marks on the ocean floor at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. They are hundreds of miles away from land, and yet they look like troughs carved into the pale silt by some kind of machinery. There's much we don't know about the creatures that exist at the bottom of the ocean, but no form of sea life that we're aware of could have made marks like these. Upon examining the pictures, some experts have suggested that they might have been caused by deep-sea mining expeditions, but that can't be correct. No mining expedition has ever come this far from the land. It looks as if something has been sent to the bottom of the sea and then dragged along the ground to leave these grooves behind. They're first recorded in photographs that were taken by submersibles in 1989, but more recent surveys have been conducted, and the marks are still there. For all we know, they might have been there for thousands of years. They're too smooth and symmetrical to have been created by natural causes, and so we're left with a total mystery. The secrets of the ancient sanctuary of Panoias in the Vila Real district of Portugal have never been uncovered. The site consists of 3 huge megaliths carved out of boulders. Set into these carved boulders, we find various depressions and cavities, created without leaving tool marks on the rock. The purpose of the cavities is unknown. There are Latin and Greek inscriptions around them that describes rituals that were performed using the water that fills the cavities, but the general consensus among historians is that the inscriptions were added long after the cavities were made. Whatever rituals were performed here, they were done using facilities that already existed. The depressions are mostly rectangular in shape and were made using a method that we don't understand. It's likely that they were created long before the Roman era, which would mean that only basic hand tools would have been available to the people carrying out the work. Those hand tools should have left easily identifiable marks behind on the boulders, and yet they haven't. All the evidence suggests that they were cut using machinery, but that can't be possible. Machu Picchu in Peru is incredible for multiple reasons. One is that it was built on the top of a mountain by the Inca, a civilization that possessed no metal tools or even the wheel to help them transport building materials up there. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about it, though, is its astonishingly sophisticated water and drainage system. Building work at Machu Picchu is thought to have been completed in the 15th century, and it avoided destruction at the hands of the Spanish conquistadors for the simple reason that they never found it. The site benefits from a natural spring, and there's evidence that the city was carefully planned and then built around it. These ancient builders made a collection system to increase the spring's yield, then an artificial canal that guided the water down to the city's residential areas. Once it got there, it split off through 16 channels into foundations, the largest of which was inside the emperor's private residence. Beneath each foundation is a basin, where water pools and then runs down either to the next fountain or eventually out of the city. There are even storm valves to redirect excess water after heavy rain and send it to the agricultural terraces. This is a masterpiece of hydraulic technology from 600 years ago. If you don't look after your teeth, or you're unlucky enough to suffer an accident or illness, you might find yourself needing false teeth to replace the real ones you've lost. You might think that false teeth are a relatively recent invention, but you'd be wrong. You can trace the history of false teeth all the way back to the Etruscans, the ancient pre-Roman occupants of Italy 2,700 years ago. Their prosthetic teeth would have been a little more uncomfortable to wear than their modern equivalents, though. They were made from bone and ivory. Real human teeth were used where possible, and there's even some evidence that poor people used to pull their own teeth out and sell them to denture makers for money. The downside of using human teeth is that they eventually rot and need replacing, which explains why gold, silver, or mother of pearl was preferred in place of real teeth by the medieval era. Today, most dentures are made of either ceramics or plastic, but they're made to the same principles that the Etruscans introduced all that time ago. we've already marveled at the incredible irrigation system of Machu Picchu. Now, here's an even older one from England. This irrigation system was discovered in Cambridge in 2014 and is the work of the ancient Romans. It's thought to be the oldest system of its kind in the British Isles, with an estimated age of 1,950. As you might expect, it's a far more basic system than the one the Inca used in Peru, consisting of little more than pit wells and planting beds. History runs deep in this part of Cambridge, with evidence of settlements existing all the way back to the late Neolithic period of 4,200 years ago. It remained in use throughout the Bronze and Roman ages, with the most recent land use being the creation of practice trenches for recently recruited soldiers during the Second World War. The Romans grew asparagus here, and when the weather turned dry, they'd collect water from the pit wells and pour it into the ditches to ensure the crops remained fed. The beds are parallel, arranged along a slope and connected directly to a natural water source. It's through methods like this that the Romans introduced horticulture to Britain. When is a granary actually a bank? Improbable as it might seem, the answer to that question is when it's in ancient Morocco. These are the Berber granaries, and they're thought by many archaeologists and historians to be among the oldest banking systems in the world. They would first have been used by the Amazigh communities who lived in the mountains of southern Morocco, and would have stored precious jewelry and items along with the produce of their harvests. Over time, certificates of ownership also came to be stored here, mostly concerning silver and gold or properties and land. The granaries are hundreds of years old, but the question of exactly how old is a secret that's been lost to time. We tend to think of banks as places to store money, but their original function was as places to store valuable objects. Access to the granaries was restricted only to authorized people, and their use was governed by laws written on wooden tablets. The oldest surviving tablet is the Agadir Ujarif tablet, which was written in 1492, but is not thought to be the first iteration of the laws. The granaries are crumbling today, but a recently announced government-backed preservation project will hopefully help with that. You might look at the giant Narayas of Hama and see them as Ferris wheels, but that would be to greatly underestimate their age and significance. These magnificent ancient structures are more like water wheels than fairground rides, and they're about 2,500 years old. No water mill or water wheel was built anywhere else in the world until the early 16th century. Nobody has any idea how this technology came about in Syria so much earlier than in the rest of the world. But the gap between 2,500 years ago and the 16th century suggests that its secrets might have been forgotten and then rediscovered. Today, there are 17 wheels standing in Hama, which is fewer than there used to be. Some fell centuries ago, while others were sadly destroyed during the recent wars that have blighted the country. The first recorded mention of the Narayas is on a mosaic in the city of Apamea, which can be dated to the year 469 BCE. All that tells us, though, is that the wheels were already standing by the time the mosaic was made. There's nothing to say that they hadn't already been here for hundreds of years. Sending messages across long distances was very difficult until the Greek inventor Aeneas came along about 2,400 years ago. Armies might communicate using smoke signals or torchlight, but detailed messages were impossible to transmit using such primitive methods. Aeneas made it easier for this country's soldiers to communicate by creating the hydraulic telegraph. The system is complicated, but it works. An officer in each position would be given a vessel full of rods and water. Written on those rods were a series of coded, pre-agreed messages. When one side was ready to communicate with the other, they would signal each other with a torch, and then pull the plug on the vessel. Once enough water had poured out of the vessel to reveal the intended message, another torchlight signal would be sent to tell the other officer to stop pouring. The message would then be read and understood before the vessels were refilled. As crude a method as this might seem now, it gave the Greek army a massive military advantage on the battlefield 2,300 years ago. Aeneas was quite rightly lauded for his invention. It was light years ahead of anything anyone else had thought of at that time. Our ancient ancestors mastered the art of building fountains a very long time ago, but most of the fountains they built close to the time of the invention of the concept have long since been destroyed or replaced by something more modern. The exception is the Philippios Krini in Greece, which is the oldest still functional fountain in the world. This water feature was built by order of King Philip II of Macedonia around 2,300 years ago, which explains why its name translates into English as Philip's Fountain. You'd expect a fountain built for a king to be elaborate, but this is quite a rustic and plain affair. That's because it was built for the king's soldiers rather than Philip himself. His men spent some time camped in Nestani ahead of a looming battle with the armies of Amphissa, and he needed a way to give them something to drink. The fountain works on an Archimedes screw pump, pushing water up through pipes from the source below the ground. While the fountain occasionally needs maintenance to keep it working, none of the original parts or features have ever been replaced. When you think of the kind of weapons that might be available to a modern army, rocket launchers are probably quite close to the top of your list. It might therefore surprise you to know that variations on the idea of rocket launchers have been around since the 16th century. They're a Korean invention, and the Koreans called them hwacha. The English translation of the word is close to fire chariot. The invention of hwacha is a big part of the reason that Korea was able to repel the Japanese attempt to conquer the country in the Imjin War of the 1590s. There's some anecdotal evidence that fire chariots might have existed in Korea 100 years earlier than that, but it can't be proven. Each hwacha was basically a board full of holes on a two-wheeled cart. The holes would be lined up with a target, and arrows would be placed into them. Each arrow had a shaft full of gunpowder, which was used as a propellant. The earliest hwacha could launch 100 of these rockets at a time, but later models doubled that capacity and went even higher. They were dangerous to use because of the risk of explosion, but their deadliness made the risk worthwhile. We go to Russia now, where an ancient astronomical instrument was discovered in October 2014. You have to know what you're looking at when you see this slab of rock to appreciate its sophistication, but it's actually both a sundial and a moondial. Experts believe it dates back thousands of years to the Bronze Age. The carefully created divots on the slab's surface are arranged in a circle, which, through modern testing, has been revealed to align with events that happen in the sky, including sunrise and moonrise. That could make this a very early attempt to understand, record, and then perhaps predict the motion of celestial bodies through the sky. The artifact was probably carved by the Shrubnaya people, who lived between the Ural Mountains and Dnieper River in Ukraine thousands of years ago. For them, understanding astronomy would have been the key to understanding time. If you know the movements of the sun and the moon, you can determine what time of day it is, what season of the year it is, and when the best time to plant or harvest crops is likely to be. The more you know in advance, the better you can prepare for it. Kailasa Temple in India is a place that far more people ought to be aware of. Carved out of a single gigantic piece of rock, this is the largest monolithic structure in the world. Archaeologists believe that the work was completed about 1,300 years ago, after a team of hundreds of people labored at the site every day for more than 20 years. The legend behind the temple is that an ancient king promised Shiva that he would build the finest temple known to humanity if his sick wife recovered from her illness. She made a recovery, and so the king ordered the construction of Kailasa Temple. Carving something this elaborate out of solid rock would already be difficult, even if that rock weren't in a remote location on the side of a mountain. But this one is. How builders armed with nothing more than basic hand tools were capable of achieving this is a mystery. There's a smaller structure called Vetuvan Coil in the south of India that looks almost exactly like this but isn't finished. Vetuvan Coil might have been a practice run for Kailasa Temple, but sadly we have no evidence from the time to support the idea. Fort Vauban in France is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's also considered a historic monument by the French government and has been since 1875. The history of this remarkable site, though, goes back much further in time than that. Fort Vauban was built by the Romans and still contains the ruins of many of the buildings and structures that the Romans created here. Perhaps the most remarkable of them is the Castellum Divisorium. Back when it was new, it would have been one of the most remarkable water distribution systems in the ancient world. It's probably fair to describe Castellum Divisorium as a water tank, although the description doesn't really do it justice. Water arrived in the tank from an aqueduct and was then carried from this central point to the many public baths, fountains, and other monuments of Nemausus by a complicated network of lead pipes. You have to use your imagination to see the site as it once was. Each hole in the base of the stone tank once hosted a pipe, and each pipe could run on for several miles. It's a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering. Our next ancient invention is also water-based, but this time it's a musical instrument. The first hydraulis is thought to have been invented in Alexandria by Ctesibius. The organ worked by filtering compressed air through a container of water to equalize pressure and then emitting sound through rows of pipes. All the pipes were of different lengths, so each pipe produced a different note. These clever water organs would go on to be used in temples, hippodromes, festivals, and Roman imperial courts. The hydraulis of Dion represented a step forward in this type of technology. It was played by hand rather than by water, and had balanced keys that could be played with the lightest of touches. What's left of the 2,100-year-old hydraulis of Dion was discovered close to Mount Olympus, Greece in 1992. 24 of the instrument's open-topped pipes are still present, each set to a different height. The first 19 pipes correspond to the traditional system of ancient Greek music, including one chromatic and one diatonic scale. It's thought that the final 5 pipes form an extension to the diatonic scale, although this is by no means certain. The lower part of the organ, including its air-pressing system, was sadly gone by the time archaeologists found it. We're going to stay with the theme of hydraulic engineering a little longer, because now we're looking at a delightfully named invention called a shadoof. It's a type of irrigation tool known as a water life, and it's been in use for at least 5,000 years. Alternative names for the device include counterpoise lift, well sweep, and thula. The invention of the device is credited to the Mesopotamians. The ancient Egyptians came up with their own version around 1,000 years later, and then over the centuries that followed, versions of the shadoof were used by the ancient Minoans and Chinese. In basic terms, a shadoof lifts water from one source and transfers it into either a basin or another waterway. A shadoof is little more than a long pole on a pivot with a bucket attached to one end. It's not complicated, but it's clever. In fact, it's a device so perfectly suited to its intended task that this 5,000-year-old invention is still in use in many parts of Africa and Asia today, especially in India and Pakistan. It's a classic case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've already discussed the ancient Romans in this video, and they're quite rightly credited with inventing many things. They did not, however, invent the Patara pipes of Turkey, even though historians spent many decades believing that they did. We can see why they were confused. The pipes stretch between the sites of many former Roman settlements and outposts in the region, but the Romans built their settlements to line up with the pipes. The pipes were already there when the Romans arrived. Archaeologists are fairly sure about this for a few reasons, the most persuasive of which is that there's no written record of the Romans creating the Patara pipes. The Romans liked to write about their achievements at length, so it's odd that they wouldn't mention a marvel like the pipes. The design of the pipes is also totally at odds with the typical ancient Roman architectural style. A Roman pillar was discovered in Patara in 1993, and upon the pillar are inscriptions detailing everything the Romans did during their time there, right down to the creation of basic roads. If the Romans didn't create the pipes, though, who did? There are so many ancient sites to check out in Greece that it's impossible to get around to them all in a single visit. Even if you were to come back 5 or 6 times, though, you still might not get around to the windmills of the Lassithi Plateau. There are thousands of white-sailed windmills standing here, many of which are still in use, just as they have been for hundreds of years. The windmills are on Crete, where a rural community was once dependent on a network of 10,000 windmills for their very survival. The community has been living here for more than 2,600 years. The soil is naturally fertile, but the high water table makes it hard to farm the land because of water saturation. The windmills help to avoid the risk of rainfall flooding the fields and destroying the harvest. They're stone-bodied creations and use wind power to pump water out from flooded zones and distribute it evenly across the fields. There are about 5,000 of the windmills still standing today, about half the number there used to be, and most of them are abandoned. Still, though, they're a lasting monument to the ingenuity of their creators. The umbrella is a basic but important invention. Before someone came up with the idea, you had 2 options when it started raining outside. You could either stay where you were and remain dry, or go outside and get wet. Most people think that the umbrella was invented by the Chinese around 4,000 years ago. This is taught as a fact in China. In reality, though, there's a lack of hard evidence to support the claim. However, we do know that umbrellas were invented to protect their owners from the sun, rather than the rain. The Egyptians first began using parasols 4,000 years ago, about the same time as they emerged in China, and they were used to provide shade rather than dryness. Evidence of ancient parasols also exists in ancient Greece and Assyria. The parasol is probably more likely to have been an Egyptian invention than a Chinese invention, but it's unlikely anyone's ever going to be able to say for sure, and it's not impossible that the idea occurred to both cultures at around the same time. The first waterproof umbrella, though, is definitely a Chinese invention, and first appeared around 3,100 years ago. If you want to make a name for yourself as a historian, try to work out what the real purpose of Volvel paper machines is. They were invented by Ramon Lull of Majorca during the 13th century, but Ramon was quite an eccentric man. He claimed his Volvels could detect absolute truth, which is clearly nonsense. It's possible that they could correctly calculate the date and time, but scientists have differing opinions about that. Lull's Volvel is vaguely similar in design to the astrolabe, and arguably more impressive because an astrolabe is a substantial machine made of steel. A Volvel is every bit as intricate, and yet far more delicate. According to his writings, Lull believed that all nations in the world would unite as one during his lifetime, and the Volvel would help that process along. Through careful study, academics have demonstrated that if you line the hole in the Volvel with the pole star and then center the crossed circles around it, you'll get the approximate date and time, no matter where you are on Earth. If it has functions beyond that, we've never been able to find them. Where would we be today if Johannes Gutenberg hadn't invented the printing press in the 15th century? His creation changed the world, and yet it wasn't just a single creation. It was several all rolled into one. To come up with his world-famous printing press, the German inventor first had to come up with a metal alloy that could melt quickly, but also cool fast enough to create a durable and reusable type. He also had to come up with a new oil-based form of ink that was thick enough to adhere to the metal type, but also capable of transferring onto paper. The style of press he made was nothing like the printing methods that were already in use in his era, and is more likely to be based on the design of earlier oil or wine presses. None of the techniques Gutenberg used existed anywhere else in Europe at the time, where the dominant method was a fairly primitive variation of woodblock printing. Suddenly, it became possible to print up to 3,600 pages per machine per day. The people of the world came to look to the printing press for news and information, and this is where the term "the press" originally came from. If you're already familiar with the Bar-Bagel Aqueduct and the mills in Fontvieille, France, we tip our hat to you. This is an ancient Roman site that very few people have ever heard of, including people who live in the nearby French city of Arles. It should get far more attention than it does. Historians have described the ancient complex as both the greatest known concentration of mechanical power in the ancient world and the biggest ancient mill complex on the planet. 16 of the overshot wheels that made up that milling factory are still there today. There's a smaller complex like this in the Janiculum in Rome, and historical record suggests there may have been another in Amida, Mesopotamia. The water wheels at Bar-Bagel are lined up in 2 blocks of 8, descending down a steep hillside. They started turning at the beginning of the 2nd century and remained in use for close to 200 years. Based on the scale of the operation, historians believe that the mills could process about 4.5 tons of flour every day. That's enough to provide bread for a population of 10,000 people. According to modern-day historian James Burke, the design of these mills had a direct influence on the Industrial Revolution in Britain. Circus Maximus in Rome was once the biggest sports stadium in the world, and also the scene of the worst tragedy at a sporting event in human history. Its name translates as largest circus, but you wouldn't have seen any clowns here in ancient times. Instead, it was an enormous Roman chariot racing stadium with enough space to accommodate 150,000 people at once. The design of the Circus Maximus became the default template for other arenas that were built elsewhere in the empire, although none were as large as the original. Work on the stadium began 2,600 years ago, and it was built and then rebuilt several times in the centuries that followed, remaining in use for more than 1,000 years. About halfway through that time, in the year 140, an upper seating section of Circus Maximus collapsed during an event. According to contemporary accounts that were recorded in the Historia Augusta, 1,112 people lost their lives because of the accident. The stadium was nevertheless rebuilt and is thought to have staged its last beast hunt event during the 6th century. Concerts are still occasionally held there to this day. How old do you imagine the oldest waste recycling facility in the world is? 50 years, perhaps? Maybe a century at a push? Closer to 200 years in a particularly progressive country, perhaps? Think again. The oldest waste recycling plant in the world is in Dubai, and it's 3,000 years old. It was discovered in 2020 by Polish archaeologists working in the southern stretches of the Persian Gulf. The evidence gathered by the research team suggests that ancient craftspeople came here to smelt metals and make tools using ceramic waste and other leftover materials. In other words, the people who lived here all that time ago didn't throw their broken ceramics away. They brought them here instead, and they used the pieces to make something else. There doesn't appear to have been any limit on their productivity or creativity. Archaeologists have found jewelry, figurines, weapons, and cult objects, all made from recycled materials at the site. What's less certain is why this specific site was chosen for the task. It's miles away from any other settlement and surrounded on all sides by featureless desert. There's no satisfactory answer to the question of who built the world's first robot and when. You could go all the way back to the automatons of Hero of Alexandria if you wanted, but not everyone accepts Hero's creations as robots. If you want a sophisticated, recognizable robot, though, try the digesting duck. It was made by the French inventor Jacques de Vaucanson in May 1739. Vaucanson didn't create a robot because he wanted to impress scientists, though. He created it because he wanted to amuse his peers. Oddly enough, that's exactly why Hero made his automatons too. Jacques would amaze his friends by feeding kernels of grain to his metal duck, which the duck would appear to eat, digest, and excrete. In reality, the grains were deposited inside an internal chamber within the duck, while the pellets of waste came out of another chamber. The people of the time had never seen anything like it before, and so for the main part, they were fooled by the trick. It was even said by some writers at the time that the duck could quack and drink water, although how it could have been capable of this is unknown. Sadly, the duck was destroyed when a French museum burned down in 1879. The Vihara Cave Temple is probably the finest example of Indian rock-cut architecture still standing in the world today. Found at Mamallapuram in India's Tamil Nadu district, the breathtakingly intricate and beautiful hand-carved cave dates back to the 17th century and is a work of dedication to the ancient god Vishwakarma Sthapathis. Many small caves like this, which are known as mandapas, are scattered around the area, but the Vihara Cave Temple is by far and away the most ornate and well-preserved of them. UNESCO clearly agrees with that assessment. They designated it as a World Heritage Site in 1984. Several mythical figures pertinent to Hindu beliefs can be found within the cave, but the most notable of them all is a large carving of Lord Vishnu, reaching into the sea to lift up Bhudevi, the Mother Earth goddess. It's thought that the cave predates the town around it, and was probably completed around the year 650. It holds the distinction of being the oldest known monument in all of Mahabalipuram, although its hidden location means that even some of the local residents don't know it's there. We tend to think of the ancient Egyptians as one of the great early advanced civilizations when it comes to building, but a recent discovery in the United Kingdom has experts there reassessing what they thought they once knew about how advanced their ancestors were during the Stone Age. Working on a housing development in Monmouth, Wales, close to the border with England, has uncovered the remains of a crannog that dates back 4,800 years and is even older than the pyramids of Giza. The crannog is an intelligent design. It would have been a wooden fort built on stilts, allowing the occupiers of the fort to defend themselves and their villages from opposing tribes and barbarians. Even the island it stands upon is human-made, making the whole thing a stunning feat of engineering. Given that the crannog is in the middle of what was once a lake, it's almost certain that the people who made it were very early boat builders, perhaps even the very first in the world. In Portugal, you'll find a series of ancient tombs that are considered so unique and impressive that they're known by one single collective name. People call them the monumental megaliths of Alcalar. You'll find them in what's now Portimao, but 5,000 years ago, the land was home to a very different civilization. 18 separate tombs were created among the region's hilltops to house the remains of the dead of this civilization, eventually becoming a necropolis. The hilltop position was presumably chosen because it would make the site easy to defend. Most of the tombs are rectangular chambers connected by tunnels, but the Tholos 7 chamber is of particular interest. It's a beehive cairn tomb, quite unlike any of the others that are assembled around it, with a corridor that runs below and a crypt at its heart. Experts have speculated that Tholos 7 may have been built for the leader of the settlement who lived here, but as with many ancient historical tombs and sites, that's just guesswork. In various locations in India, you'll find enormous buildings that appear to be ancient temples, but go underground instead of rising toward the heavens. These aren't temples at all. They're stepwells, and they're some of the most artistically pleasing and architecturally impressive ancient buildings in the country. Once upon a time, they were all flooded with water, which was harvested to serve towns and cities during hotter months, but now almost all of them stand empty. The first of these stepped wells was carved into the ground somewhere around the year 200, with the practice becoming commonplace over the course of the next 2 centuries. The wells had different names in different places, such as Rani Ki Vav, Chand Baori, Madhira Stepwell, and Baoli. but they all served the same basic purpose: to capture monsoon water and use it to supply the local community all year round. Although they were simple constructions at first, by the 11th century they'd taken on the appearance of vast, monolithic cathedrals. Who goes to so much trouble as to make buildings this beautiful to keep water in? If you go looking for Chittorgarh Hill Fort in India, you won't miss it. It's a gargantuan island made of rock that has the appearance of something that might have been built by giants. If you hike up the ascent to the fort, which takes you through 7 gates, you'll find yourself reaching a plateau 500 feet high, which goes on for 4 miles. Within those 4 miles, you'll find some of the most jaw-dropping ancient ruins on the face of planet Earth, sitting right next to a village and reservoir that are still in use today. Ask the villagers about the ruins, and they'll be happy to tell you ghost stories and legends. One of the most popular stories is of the crumbling Padmini's palace. It was here that warrior King Sultan Alauddin Khilji is said to have first laid eyes on Rani Padmini and fallen in love with her instantly. She was married to Rana Ratan Singh, but the Sultan didn't care about that. He launched a full-scale assault on the area to capture her. But she and 13,000 other villagers chose to light an enormous funeral pyre and dive into it, choosing death over the prospect of capture. Moving to Cambodia, we find the wondrous but largely forgotten temple site of Ko Kher, home to the famous stepping pyramid temple of Prasat Thom, and once, albeit briefly, the capital city of the entire Khmer Empire. King Jayavarman IV moved the capital of the empire to Ko Kher in the year 928 and reigned from there, possibly indicating that he was from the area, or was strongly connected to it. His successor, Harsahavarman II, moved the capital back to Tonle Sap Lake in 944. For years, much of this fantastic site lay unknown and undisturbed because it's so far from any significant population center. Ko Kher is surrounded by thick, dense jungle, has no towns anywhere near it, and is 10 miles from the nearest village. It's thought that it stood empty and forgotten for 1,000 years until it was rediscovered in the 20th century. Many beautiful sculptures were carved and erected here during the days of the king's rule, but most have long since been looted or found their way to foreign museums. Even now, visiting Ko Kher is dangerous. It's thought that there are unexploded Khmer Rouge landmines in the area around it. If you want to find the most awe-inspiring ancient monument in Istanbul, you'll have to look underneath the ground. That's where you'll find the Basilica Cistern, which is also known as Yerebatan Sarai, which loosely translates into English as the Sunken Palace. This incredible architectural marvel is a leftover from the days of the Byzantine Empire. The cistern was built in the year 532 by Justinian I of the Byzantine Emperor, using materials scavenged from earlier Roman buildings, and has stayed intact despite centuries of earthquakes that have destroyed buildings that were far newer. Justinian ordered it to be built in the aftermath of the Nika Revolt in Constantinople, which had left 30,000 people dead and destroyed much of the old city. Now, as was the case all those years ago, fish swim in the artificial lake at the cistern's basin. The most mysterious feature to be found here are the Gorgon heads, one of which has been placed sideways and the other upside down. If it was an attempt at symbolism, its meaning has been lost to time. The gloriously decorated Aztec sunstone was discovered during building work in the main square of Mexico City in December 1790, and was initially and incorrectly called an Aztec calendar. Historians now agree that it isn't a calendar at all, but we still have no idea as to its real purpose. The enormous stone is 3 feet thick, 12 feet in diameter, and 24 tons in weight. The symbols which extensively decorate its surface are generally believed to be pagan in origin. It's thought that it was carved somewhere between 1500 and 1520, but was buried in Zocalo to protect it during the Spanish conquest. The deliberate act of preservation suggests that it had great importance to the Aztecs, but we have no knowledge of what that importance might have been. It may have been that the purpose wasn't pleasant. Right in the center of the stone is a depiction of Natiu, the sun god, with a human heart in each hand and a sacrificial knife where his tongue should be. Some theorists have used this fact to suggest that it might even have been an altar for human sacrifice. It's a little-known historical fact that the very first country in the world to wholly accept Christianity as its official religion was Armenia. Gregory the Illuminator brought the faith to the country in the year 301 when he baptized the Armenian royal family, and off the back of that, the country built some of the earliest and most spectacular Christian buildings of all time. Chief among those buildings is the Gegard Monastery, a cave chapel based around a natural spring that Gregory had declared to be sacred. Over time, the humble cave grew and became more elaborate, gaining a gorgeous rock chapel in 1215 that was carved out of the stones surrounding the entrance to the cave. Time doesn't seem to pass inside the chapel. Standing there, you get a sense of being in the distant past. The only part of the monastery that isn't beautiful is its name, Gegard, which is a reference to the spear that Christians say was used to pierce the side of Jesus Christ during the crucifixion. Pretty much the only thing that archaeologists can agree upon about the standing stones of Rajagil is that they're called the standing stones of Rajagil. Everything beyond that is just guesswork and rumor. There are 50 groups of stone pillars standing on the edge of Saudi Arabia's Nafud Desert, and they were clearly placed there deliberately. Some people think they were landmarks helping traders find their way to and from ancient cities, which wouldn't be all that remarkable. Other people, however, believe that they combine to make a kind of ancient stargazing observatory, and that would be nothing short of astonishing. The people who erected the stone pillars lived on the land some 6,000 years ago, and put some serious time and effort into making the stone arrangements. On average, each individual pillar weighs more than 5 tons. The fact that some of them have fallen over doesn't help matters much, but supporters of the astronomy theory point out that their curved arrangement matches the movements of the sun through the sky. It's therefore conceivable that they could have been used to chart the positions of celestial objects in the night sky. If the standing stones of Rajagil are a very large conundrum, then the Saqqara bird is a much smaller one. But it doesn't make it any less mysterious. If you only take a brief glance at it, you'd assume that the 2,200-year-old sculpture is just one of many ancient Egyptian carvings of birds. Look closer, though, and you'll see that aside from the eyes and the beak, it has a lot more in common with a modern plane than it does with any bird we've ever seen. The wings are thin, straight, tapered, and devoid of feathers. The tail is square, too. If it just happened to look like a plane, we could write these things off as coincidence. But the sculpture is also aerodynamically perfect. A research team made a perfectly scaled-up version of the sculpture during the 1970s and demonstrated that it was capable of flying and gliding. Is this an out-of-place artifact? Or was there an Egyptian toy maker somewhere made their child a flying toy, little realizing that they'd invented a test model aircraft over 2,000 years ahead of schedule? What may be the world's oldest representation of a tiger, a small ceramic figurine, was found in Iran. All other Iranian tiger imagery was from thousands of years after this 5,000-year-old reddish-brown tiger with darker stripes. It was found in the Yarim Tepe archaeological site and was originally located in 1960. The tiger stands 3.1 inches high, though only the chest, neck, and most of the head were located. Dating has determined it to be from between 3,500 and 3,100 BCE, displaying how they viewed the animal at the time and their way of recreating it. These dates make it not only the oldest in Iran, but one of the oldest anywhere in the world. Burial mounds and the graves within are some of the most important locations to gather artifacts, as both remains and grave goods provide information about the community that otherwise would remain unknown. In a surprising discovery, a burial mound was found to have a Silla commander with his full set of armor, as well as a full set of armor for his horse. Found in a grave in Gyeongju in South Korea, which was the capital of the kingdom from 57 BCE to 937 CE, this is the first time that a full set has been found, and especially to have the matching horse armor. Along with both the commander and his armor and the horse armor, there were also other grave goods and the remains of another person. It is believed that they were an attendant or chamberlain, possibly a retainer sacrifice to show loyalty and status. This is only the second time that a full set of armor has been found from this era. With all the armor intact, this is a great display of their great and expanding military power, as well as how heavily armored their cavalry was. A dagger from the Hallstatt period has been found on a beach in Poland, dating to around 2,800 years old, putting it firmly in the Iron Age. The dagger was in exceptional condition and fully intact. After falling from the cliff in the clay that had held it in place for thousands of years when the heavy rains eroded the cliffside. After a storm, it was noticed that the edge of the cliff had loosened and pieces of the clay and soil had fallen down onto the beach, where a citizen with a metal detector found and uncovered the dagger. It was carefully cleaned and restored so it could be studied and displayed. Measuring only 10 inches, intricate decorations flow up the blade and the handle alike. Carvings include linear crescents, crosses, which appear like stars, are used to create constellations, and the handle has alternating patterns that extend right to the blade. It is believed to have been a ritual dagger rather than for daily use. As the Hallstatt period is known for advances in metalwork and ran from 800 to 450 BCE, this dagger and its intricate designs and strong skills, the dagger is a strong example of the time period. During this time, bronze metals were being traded for iron ones, and it ushered in the early Iron Age. Further testing is being completed to find the makeup of the metal and to determine if it was made locally or imported. Bronze Age artifacts are valuable in the way they show the lives of those who were alive at the time, as bronze became the most used metal and adapted for tools and weapons. A new discovery at the Akana Mound in Turkey of cuneiform tablets is just one example of these artifacts. The tablets have been dated to 1500 to 1400 BC and include information on religious practices, administrative tasks and records, and economic records for the region. Included with the records were furniture orders, lists of employees and what city they were in, when and where food was distributed, and what raw materials were distributed. Though a fire had affected the structure, the tablets survived and were found in a pile of ash, with evidence of the fire spreading across a full section of the city. The building in which the tablets were found may have been an administrative building, based upon the information on the tablets, as well as other artifacts that were located. Carved figurines that have been found along the England coast were discovered in Ruse and dated to the Late Bronze Age. The collection of figurines included 8 human figures, 2 miniature boats, assorted weapons that were suited to the size of the human figures, each of which stood between 14 and 16 inches tall. Each figure has quartzite eyes and genitals that are removable. In the boat, there are several small holes that would fit the figurines, letting up to 4 of them fit within the boat, and it has a sea serpent for a head. Due to their placement and the eyes of the figures, it is suggested that they may have been buried in a ritual which was connected to Odin or Ul, who was an earlier representation of Odin. Evidence of this includes the ability to remove the genitals to change the characters to appear more masculine or feminine, as Odin was said to shapeshift, as well as the sacrifice Odin made of one eye, while the figurines have one eye larger than the other. These figurines also offer insight into how gender and roles were viewed at the time they were made, with all of the figures having weapons and shields which would otherwise be included only with male warriors. A sword that was found in Poland, near the city of Idwa, has been dated to the 14th or 15th century. The area was once part of the theocratic state Teutonic Order state in the 13th century, created by the same German monks that were responsible for crusades in the Baltic area. Found through the use of a metal detector in wetlands, it was broken into several pieces, which were later put back together. Near the hilt, the blade has a bend that reaches almost 30 degrees, leaving the handle upwards as the blade remained flat. In the Susita National Park near the Sea of Galilee, a small assortment of jewelry was found which is dated to 2,000 years ago. Excavations were taking place at the site during efforts to restore and preserve the site. With this find, a set of earrings were found alongside a gold ring through the use of a metal detector and appeared to have been burial offerings. Both the earrings and the ring were dated to the period of time between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD. Several other artifacts were also found, including fragments of stucco that had been used in the residential area, and plaster sculptures which showed the manner of decoration and luxury in the wealthy homes. Excavations in the site are being done by section, and these were found in the residential space, where a cathedral and the ancient city gate were also located, along with the cemeteries within the city. The city itself was named for horses and was a thriving city during the Hellenistic period and throughout the Roman and Byzantine era until 749 CE, when an earthquake damaged the city beyond repair. Several items were found and restored from these time periods and represent the daily lives of those who lived within the city. When a seemingly plain clay jar was found in the city of Malaya, it wasn't expected to contain a hoard, but it weighed just under 20 pounds. Within the jar was found a large hoard of silver coins, which were dated along with the jar to approximately 300 BC. After counting, there were 409 silver coins found in the jar, and each one was intact and reflected traditional coins that had come before. All of the coins were an ancient Greek coin, tetradrachm, which was common from 510 to 38 BC, 387 of them being one-sided and 22 being double-sided. The emirate was one of the 3 largest in the UAE, and it has land against both the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, providing a wide area for artifacts to be found and making it a key trade location. The city was occupied for over 130,000 years. Even before it was a city in the Paleolithic period, the area is rich in artifacts and history. Evidence of farming 11,000 years ago was found, and the history of the city built from there. In later years, there was an irrigation system for the farming and a water distribution system for the homes and businesses. Dereham, Norfolk, had a surprising find when a collection of Bronze Age metal was found to have lead ingots mixed within. Both the bronze and the lead items were dated to 950 to 800 BC. Items included 4 socketed axe heads, a piece of an axe blade, a small piece of a bun ingot that was ready for melting, and 3 rectangular lead ingots. With so many pieces being missing or items being broken, it is suggested that they were buried to store them safely before they could be melted and recycled into new items. Of all of the pieces, it is the lead ingots that are the most mysterious, as while lead was often used in conjunction with other metals to create an alloy, it was at this time rarely used to make a complete object, and even more rare to find a pure lead ingot, with this being the first of its kind. Trade is another way in which items may appear in spaces they are unexpected, and this city may have been a hub of trade with its position and population. Cleaning objects and clearing away rust and discoloration to return it to its original state can make a difference in identifying and displaying the object. In one such instance, a collection of what is called the Bronze Age Peebles hoard was expected to be a collection of bronze items with the typical outward appearance and color, was found instead to have a silver appearance and a sheen that was unexpected. Over 500 objects were found, and they each were dated between 1000 and 800 BC. And this is a first in all of Europe, with no comparable finds at this time. Items within the hoard were made with a technique that is no longer in use and involves casting with wax. Further investigation on the items will be completed to learn more about the methods used to create the silver appearance and style. Each piece is being meticulously cleaned so as not to damage the surface, and they will be restored as closely to the original state as possible. X-rays are also being used to identify the tin that is found in the alloy metal, and this has been determined to be the cause of the silver color to the coins, while exact percentages and mixes have not yet been determined. While Christopher Columbus is a recognizable name and a well-known traveler who was incorrectly credited with finding North America, there is also a lot that is not known about his journeys across the world. A manuscript has recently been found that answers some of the questions about those travels. With 39 pages, it holds information that has never been released before and describes the political standing of Columbus in the 19th century. It was found in the library of the Benedictine Abbey at Montserrat near Barcelona, Spain, where it was being stored without ever having been digitized or transcribed in any way, as it didn't fit the set parameters for items that were being managed in that way. Dated in 1701, the papers show a version of occurrences and experiences that are not yet published or shared in any other way. The tone and the presentation change throughout the pages, and this has brought the suspicion that some parts were adjusted later, accounting for the poetic flow being interrupted by other additions or changes. Grave goods and tombs are known as a source of artifacts and traditions, both religious and funerary. A sarcophagus that was found in Caesarea, Israel, displays not only their burial traditions, but also shares a scene of Dionysus and Heracles having a drinking contest. The sarcophagus is carved from marble and includes both of these gods in intricate detail holding their drinks. On the front is Dionysus, god of wine, in a procession with animals, instruments, and attendants, while the Heracles is laying on a lion skin with a cup in his hand. The ends are used to depict loss, mourning the person who the coffin was made for. This theme for a carving is common in the culture, and there have been others found with the same type of scene, but different details, with one setting them in a dining room and another in a quiet scene in a mosaic. As the first time it has been found on a sarcophagus, this stretches the expectations of the scene and how people were mourned in the city. The city itself was once a Roman harbor city, which remained a key place for travel and trade for several centuries. Accessing marble from the city would have been made easier as a trading port, as it would have been imported. Buried in a complex of ruined Hindu temples from the 9th century in southern Vietnam, a golden linga was recovered. A linga is a representation of divine energy, and the gold creates an expectation of wealth and abundance. The excavation was at the Po Dam Tower cluster, and it has unearthed many artifacts, but the one getting the most attention is the golden linga. It was just under 20 inches below the surface, and it was determined to be from the 8th century, the same time that the tower was built. Measuring 2.6 inches higher and a diameter of 2.1 inches, it weighs only 2.76 ounces, and testing showed that it is 90.4% gold. A linga is important to worship in several areas throughout Southeast Asia. It represents fertility and the source of life, and is connected to Shiva, who is the deity for rebirth and for destruction. Smooth surfaces and an even broader around the base display the advanced skills of the metalwork and the time and effort that was put into the item. Not only does this particular linga, which was declared a national treasure, represent the wealth of the region, but also the religious beliefs. Merovingian rings, also called architectural rings, were a type of ring made of gold in the 6th and 7th centuries which would have a dome bezel, which would resemble a building or a church, and would include decorations. They may have arches, patterns, filigrees, or granulations. A recent discovery of a silver ring in Israel may be a part of the evolution from the Merovingian rings and the wedding bands in Western Europe, and for Jewish wedding bands, which also had miniature buildings on them. These rose to popularity in the late Middle Ages, and may have been based upon the original style. Two opinions have been formed about this, with one suggesting they are a Merovingian ring due to the domed or arched building on the ring, with others maintaining a difference as they were made significantly later, and as they were not made of gold. Several similar rings have been found and believed to have been made in the same workshop, as well as being an almost exact replica of those from the Merovingian rings, several of which have been found in tombs throughout Belgium, France, and Germany. Found in the Hoekhoek archaeological site from the 14th century and resting on a Roman synagogue, the ring may have been made alongside the originals, as there is no determined date for the ring. It has been suggested that the ring was made in the 6th or 7th century and used until the 15th century, when it became lost in the ruins. Jewelry has been a way of displaying personality and financial status for centuries, and in Poland, a necklace is showing the wide variety of items that could be used to create jewelry from. The necklace was a gift for a child who had passed over 2,500 years ago and found in a funerary urn. The cremated remains were within a cremation cemetery from the Hallstatt period, which was active from 850 to 400 BC. Grave 543 was found to house the remains of a 10-year-old, buried with sheep bones or goat bones, pieces of bark, a bronze fibula shaped as a harp, and several beetle exoskeletons. 17 of the bug's remains were found, each with the heads, legs, and abdomens removed, with evidence of them having been strung together with a blade of grass to create a necklace. Other instances included records of the Hutsuls using rose and copper chafer beetles to make protection jewelry. During excavations in Austria at the ancient city of Bergbickel, a Christian church was found to house several artifacts within. One of the artifacts is a 1,500-year-old ivory box, which is the first of its kind to be found in any archaeological dig. The piece is so damaged that it was found in several pieces, making it not possible to recreate it exactly. To determine how many pieces are missing or what size it is when fully assembled, with the pieces that have been found, it will measure between 7 and 11 inches across. It was determined to be a pyx, which would be used to hold remains of saints or Christian ceremonies, and have been in use since the 4th century. Often they were made of gold, silver, or enamel, with ivory not being used until the Middle Ages. At this time, there have been only 40 of them found in ivory throughout the world, and the remainder are held for preservation and protection within cathedrals or churches. Estimates place the abandonment of the building and the pyx in 610, where it remained until its discovery in 2022. Wooden shoes are still worn in some areas of the world, and especially for traditional ceremonies. But the oldest known wooden shoe is 500 years old. It was found in the Netherlands in a cesspit where it was discarded when it was worn out. Dating on items in the cesspit placed it in the 15th century, and it sits in the city of Alkmaar. Only 44 wooden shoes have been found in any of the excavations across the Netherlands and Belgium, with this one being one of the best preserved. Made of birch wood, it is rare based on that alone, as birch trees do not grow in the country, making either the wood or the shoe itself imported from somewhere they do. Although the shoe was not intact, the pieces were well preserved enough that they could be fit back together in order to find almost the full shoe, in a size 5.5 modern-day woman's shoe. When checking the dates of the items within the pit, it was found they ranged from 1450 to 1558. Cesspits were normal in all homes as the place that the garbage was disposed of, as well as waste, and often this resulted in shoes, clothing, and broken household items would end up in the pits. The only other wooden item found in that site was a grain measure, of which there have only been a few pieces found over any of the sites in the country. Hadrian's Wall is a large defensive wall in Britain from the Roman era that is dotted with military forts and residential cities, and it is a near constant source of incredible artifacts. One recent find was a 2,000-year-old knife, made even more rare by being made for use by a fighter using their left hand. This Roman knife is made with a handle that is shaped as a gladiator, which is both decorative, and it shows the reverence and appreciation that was held for the warriors of the culture. Made of copper alloy, the gladiator is wearing a helmet and holding a shield, and he is wearing heavy armor, which is beneficial in close combat. Inspection showed that the gladiator is left-handed, which would be considered lucky, as those who fought with their left hand had an automatic advantage. This may also suggest that rather being a general gladiator, that the handle may have been designed to represent a specific warrior. Most gladiators were either slaves or criminals who had been condemned, and they would fight based upon the plans of the upper class as a form of entertainment. Gladiator battles continued throughout the empire from 105 BC to 404 AD. Some gladiators would become celebrities and may have been the inspiration or the recipient of the knife. A monumental building in Greece was unearthed that had extravagant marble sculptures of lions and artifacts of gold. The dig site is on the Peloponnese Peninsula near Aigio, which is only 5 miles away from where the modern city is now. Dating to 300 BCE, the building displayed wealth and luxury throughout, with Pentelic marble lion figures which were placed around the building in several places. Using the same marble as the Parthenon, this marble is sourced from Mount Pentelicon in Attica and is a specialized marble that was appreciated for its golden glow. Tall columns, stone blocks, and a 55-foot-long curb were all found in the south side of the building, and among these ruins were many gold and marble artifacts. Beneath the ruins were several burials, including one sarcophagus along with their grave goods in the original state. It was soon noticed that they were graves for wealthy community members who held a high social status. Included in the grave goods were gold earrings of a lion head, gold earrings in the image of Eros, and ornate necklace also made of gold, and these suggest that the location was not only a burial site, but a sanctuary or shrine for someone considered a hero. The Bronze Age is being rediscovered in the Isle of Man, with a necklace that was unearthed between Glenmore and Glenwyllan. Dating to 4,000 years old, the necklace was found in a grave lined with stones and dating to the Bronze Age. Along with the human bones within was a necklace made of black beads, never before found in the Isle of Man. It is believed that the beads of jet were sourced in Whitby, North Yorkshire, displaying the interactions between communities and people around Bronze Age Britain, and how much they shared and traded ideas and resources. 2 additional cremation burials were found and a pit with another burial who was also buried with a jet space plate necklace. Ruins in Jerusalem are sharing secrets of the past, with pieces of what were ivory plaques throughout an ancient palace. Approximately 1,500 fragments have been found that are connected to ivory plaques that were decorated and hung around the building during the 8th to 7th centuries BC. Several of the pieces have been put back together as much as possible, resulting in 12 of them having been recreated. Decorations on the frames included lotus flowers, geometric patterns, and several had a tree inside a border that consisted of rosettes. Other similar ivory inlays have also been found in Samaria, Nimrod, and Khorzabad. That these are shared with the 2 different cultures, but the other figures and decorations are not, shows the limits and the cooperation in sharing techniques, ideas, and materials of the different communities. This connection also suggests that the ivory frames were gifts made by Assyrian artists, which would have been given to high-status residents. Unique jewelry is a great way to learn about a culture and the person who wore it. And a new gold alloy neck ring from the 1st century BC is being studied to learn how it was made, with what, and who wore it. It was found during an excavation near Snedisham in Norfolk, East Anglia, and is part of the Snedisham hoard, which included this torque along with others, and additional pieces of metalwork. Each shows a highly skilled craftsman and artistry in design and quality. Remaining fully intact, this torque was dated to 75 BC, along with a bracelet and a coin. Weighing 2 pounds 3 ounces, it is made of a mix that is mostly gold with a small portion of silver, and it was created by weaving threads of metal together and twisting to make a crescent shape. The 2 ends were cast in molds, and then they were welded into place. It is expected that the site was connected to the royalty from the Iceni tribe due to the luxury and quantity of items found. A set of horns that were found in Galahus in southern Jutland, Denmark, have been dated to the 5th century and have a history of becoming lost. Found separately only 49 to 65 feet apart, but in 2 different years almost 100 years ago, the golden horns of Galahus were made of sheet gold. Segments were made with a double sheet of gold, and the first had 7 segments, all with ornaments, and the second had 6 segments. Each had 6 plain segments added to them along with a plain rim. It remains unknown what they were used for, only that they had inscriptions and were clearly a luxury item due to the use of gold in their creation. They were both stolen in 1802 and melted down, while the casts of the horns, which were created in the 18th century, also became lost. Replicas were made from drawings of the originals, making them slightly inaccurate, though the replicas were still displayed at the National Museum of Denmark, though they also have been stolen twice and then returned. The longer horn, when restored, was 2.5 feet in length, while the shorter was 1.6 feet. Each was created with 2 layers of sheets of 12-karat gold, the inner layer being smooth and the outer creating rings with figures cast and then soldered onto the rings. The second also carried an inscription in runes, which have not been translated due to the details that were lost with the originals and the original molds. Bezoar stones were believed to be medicinal and used as a talisman for positive health and healing, to mark the importance of the stones or perhaps to offer a permanent option. One such stone has been kept in a golden stand since the 17th century. The stone itself is 1 3/16 inches, with the container measuring 2 5/8 inches high and 5 11/16 inches in diameter. Made of a mix of organic and inorganic materials, the stone appears to be either real or replicating one very well, and presents as a brown stone which has been covered in gold. It is placed within the stand, which offers an oval cavity with a domed lid and 3 legs, all of 24-karat gold. The entire surface of the stand is covered in lace patterns, mythical creatures, and a trellis pattern. Believed to have been made in India, it now rests at the Met and is displayed for viewing. In 1854, a group of men arrived in Tumna County, Roscommon in Ireland, found a collection of hollow gold-colored balls. From the late Bronze Age, they were dated to 3,000 years old and were buried in the ground until they were found. Each is hollow and had holes across from each other to accommodate being worn as a necklace, but the thread or strap that held them together was not found. Upon discovery, there were more than 11 of them, though over the years a few were lost and there are currently only 9 left on display. They are housed at the National Museum of Ireland in Dublin. The smallest measured 2.5 inches across and the largest 3.8 inches, with the others filling in the range with a matching one on each side of the largest. In Naples, every year, there are gatherings at the Duomo to check the blood of San Girano to see what lies ahead. As an archbishop in the 4th century in Benevento, he was beheaded for being a Christian, and it is said that an unnamed woman gathered an ampoule of his blood on that day and kept it to be used in worship. As the blood solidified, it was noticed that up to 3 times each year in the centuries following, it would become liquid again. In each of these instances that it remained solid at those times of the year, disaster befell the city. In 1528, a plague ravaged the city. In 1980, an earthquake occurred which took the lives of almost 3,000 people. And during the times that it liquefied, no harm has befallen the city. For the day and night before the date of liquefying 3 times each year, women will gather in the church and pray to him seeking protection for the city. They will spend the entire time offering compliments and praise, asking for the city to be protected and the people saved. And the community will gather in the church the next day to view the blood and see which state it is in. Large crowds will surge the area, and the church fills quickly. Words of prayer can be heard in all directions. The reliquary will be taken by procession to the altar in the church, and it will there be displayed, and the bishop will raise a white handkerchief if it is liquid, signifying to the masses that they are safe once again.